His Excellency, Mr. Maurits de Kort, Governor of Curaçao, distinguished Central Bank governors, members of the Supervisory and Executive Board of the Centrale Bank van Curaçao and Sint Maarten, central bankers, distinguished guests, and esteemed colleagues. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 38th Adlith Brown Memorial Lecture. My name is Dr. Jasmira Wiersma, and I'm an economic analysis and research specialist here at the Centrale Bank van Curaçao and Sint Maarten. But this evening, I have the great honor to serve as your host. Tonight, we are delighted to have you here in the auditorium of the CBCS for what has long been considered one of the anticipated and most prestigious highlights of the annual Monetary Studies Conference. Each year, during this conference, we take the moment to honor the enduring legacy of Mrs. Adlith Brown. Established in 1985, this lecture series was created to commemorate her pioneering role as coordinator of the Regional Program of Monetary Studies from 1980 to 1984. Mrs. Brown was a visionary economist and was known for her intellectual leadership, regional vision, and deep commitment to advancing Caribbean economic thought. Over the past 4 decades, this lecture and conference has evolved into one of the most prestigious intellectual traditions in the region, bringing together central bankers, academics, and policymakers to reflect on the challenges and opportunities facing the Caribbean economies. This year's lecture takes place during the 56th Annual Monetary Studies Conference held under the auspices of the Caribbean Economic Research Team, CERT for short, and proudly hosted here by the Centrale Bank van Curaçao and Sint Maarten. The overarching theme of this year's conference, Resilience Through Transformation, reminds us that in a world of growing uncertainty and global turbulence, economic transformation is essential for enhancing the resilience of Caribbean economies. This evening, we are deeply honored to welcome as our distinguished speaker, Mrs. Jeanette Semeleer, President of the Centrale Bank van Aruba. Mrs. Semeleer is a distinguished leader whose career has been defined by excellence, integrity, and a profound commitment to regional development. As of 2008, Mrs. Semeleer serves as the 8th president of the Centrale Bank van Aruba and is notably the first woman in the Dutch Kingdom to occupy this position. Mrs. Semeleer holds both a Bachelor of Arts and a Master of Arts in Economics from the University of Toledo in Ohio, United States. Upon returning to Aruba, she began her distinguished career in 1984 at the government of Aruba as a policy advisor at the Department of Economic Affairs, Industry, and Commerce. She was later appointed to senior policy advisor within the same department and subsequently held the post of senior policy advisor at the Bureau of Foreign Affairs. In 1919, Mrs. Semeleer transitioned to the Central Bank of Aruba, where she was appointed adjunct head of research department, and afterwards she went to serve as manager of the research department from 1994 to 2000, then as executive director until 2008, when she was appointed president of the Centrale Bank van Aruba. Mrs. Semeleer has now held this position with distinction for over 13 years, guiding the institution with steady leadership through global and regional economic challenges, including the aftermath of the global financial crisis, oil price shocks, and the COVID-19 pandemic. As she prepares to conclude her remarkable tenure, it is truly fitting that we honor her legacy through this year's lecture. And if I may add on a personal note, as a fellow Aruban, it fills me with pride to see one of our own lead with such distinction and vision, inspiring future generations across the Caribbean. This evening, Mrs. Semeleer will deliver her lecture titled Aruba, From Isla Inutil to Isla Innovativo. Ladies and gentlemen, Please join me in giving a warm round of applause as we welcome Mrs. Jeanette Jane Semeleer on the stage to deliver the 38th Adlith Brown Memorial Lecture.
Before I start, permit me to say something very informal. I'm very honored we have been introduced by Jasmira. I've known this young lady when she was even younger, much more younger, as she was attending the same high school as my daughters. Yes, and I'm very proud to have been introduced by her. And Richard, I hope someday she will come and work at the Central Bank of Aruba. So now I start the formal part. His Excellency, Governor of Curaçao, governors, presidents of central banks, esteemed colleagues, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, buonanotte. It is with a profound sense of honor and deep appreciation that I stand here before you today to deliver the Adlith Brown Memorial Lecture. To be invited to join the esteemed list of speakers who have graced this stage is a distinction that I will cherish forever, particularly as my own journey as president of the Central Bank of Aruba will soon approach its end. I extend my sincerest gratitude to the Central Bank of Curaçao and Sint Maarten and the organizers of the 58th Annual Monetary Studies Conference for bestowing upon me this singular privilege. The legacy of Adlith Brown is one of intellectual rigor, unwavering regional vision, and a profound commitment to the economic resiliency of the Caribbean. She was a beacon of leadership during her time as a coordinator of the Regional Program of Monetary Studies, and her work continues to inspire the very discussions we are having here today. Ladies and gentlemen, to speak in her memory is to accept a charge to be candid, to be forward-looking, and to speak to the heart of the challenges and opportunities that define our shared Caribbean economic landscape. The theme of this year's conference, Resilience Through Transformation, resonates with me not as an abstract economic concept, but as the lived reality of my professional life, and indeed the very essence of my island's economic story. For over 4 decades, I have had the privilege of serving the community of Aruba, witnessing its trials and triumphs, its moments of deep economic loss and profound uncertainty, and its remarkable capacity to reinvent itself and to recover again and again. It is from this vantage point, as an economist, a central banker, and a daughter of Aruba, that I wish to share some reflections with you today. The title of my lecture is Aruba, from Isla Inutil to Isla Innovativo, an Adlith Brown Memorial Lecture on leading resilience through transformation, learning from the past, and leading into the future. This is a journey that charts a course from perceived worthlessness to a vision of boundless innovation, requiring an ambition that leads from the future. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a story of how a small island, bathing in the sun, surrounded by white beaches, and armed with little more than the courage and conviction of its people, navigated the treacherous water of global economic shifts and shocks. It is a story about how we learn from the harsh lessons of over-reliance, led through successive crises by building robust institutions, and must now lean into the future that demands a new, more profound, and sustainable transformation. This is the story of Aruba, but in it, I strongly believe are lessons that echo across our entire Caribbean region. To understand where we are and where we must go, we must first appreciate from whence we came. The early colonial history of Aruba was not auspicious nor eventful. The Spanish explorers, finding no gold then and deeming the arid landscape unsuitable for large-scale plantations, christened our island Isla Inutil, the useless island. For centuries, this label in many ways defined our economic trajectory, with relatively small economic activities from subsistence fishing, gold mining, and cultivation of aloe. We were an afterthought, a remote outpost whose economic potential was largely ignored. However, this perception was irrevocably shattered in 1924 with the opening of the Lago Oil and Transport Company. The establishment of one of the world's largest oil refineries transformed Aruba from a forgotten backwater into a bustling industrial hub. Black gold became our new lifeblood. Generations of Arubans, including my own family, found prosperity and stability in the shadow of the refinery's smokestacks, following years of economic hardship and survival, which often required sailing the unpredictable Caribbean seas to other islands, particularly Cuba, to find a job. Decades after the arrival of the refinery, the Aruban economy remained largely singular. Our economic focus was narrow, but for a time, it worked greatly. The useless island has once again found its purpose. However, the very new engine of our prosperity was also the source of our greatest vulnerability. Again, we had built a prosperous economy on a single volatile commodity controlled by forces far beyond our shores. The harsh reality of this dependency became catastrophically clear in 1985. Just as Aruba was on the cusp of achieving its long-held dream of status aparte and autonomy within the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the refinery announced its closure without any previous warning. It is difficult to overstate the seismic shock this sent through our small Aruban community. In the course of 2 years, 1985 and 1986, the sudden closure of the oil refinery wiped out nearly 35% of our GDP and triggered an unemployment crisis of staggering proportion. Government tax revenues plummeted by at least 45% during this period. The dream of self-governance seemed destined to begin as an economic nightmare. We were a nation in search of a new identity while staring in an economic abyss. The world had pulled out the rug from under us, and we were again forced to learn another, perhaps one of the most impactful lessons in resilience, that continuous over-reliance on a single economic pillar is not a foundation, but a fault line. The crisis of 1985 was not merely an economic event, it was a crucible that forged the modern Aruban spirit, demanding a pivot of historic proportions. With our backs, once more, against the wall, we swiftly made a collective, decisive choice to turn to our most abundant, yet previously underutilized assets: pristine beaches, our turquoise waters, and the innate hospitality of our people. Ladies and gentlemen, we actually had no other choice but to turn full-time to tourism quickly, which entailed a structural shift by building it as the primary driver of our economy. This immediate, decisive pivot was, as I have often described it, a mix of good luck and good policy. The good luck was that the global economic tailwind of the late 1980s, the growing appetite for the Caribbean travel, as well as our rich yet fragile natural environment and our warm and welcoming people. Luckily, Aruba already gained some experience with tourism during the 1960s and 1970s. The initial tourism experience laid the foundation for what was to come. The good policy was a deliberate, strategic, and collaborative effort between the government, the private sector, and the Aruban people to build a world-class tourism industry from the ground up by reinventing a new domestic economic identity, reallocating scarce capital and labor, and most importantly, the creation of different new institutions and cultural orientation. Also, we have invested heavily in critical infrastructure. We courted international hotel chains through generous tax holidays and government guarantees, and we started ambitiously marketing our new One Happy Island brand to the world. In addition, we invested in hospitality and hotel education and groomed a new tourism-ready workforce. The Aruba Hotel Business School, opened in 1979 and financed by the European Community Development Fund, was finally bearing its fruits. Aruba's success was breathtaking. Within a decade, we replaced the lost GDP from the refinery and built a new economic engine that created thousands of jobs. But this rapid success, like previous ones, quickly brought its own challenges. The tourism boom of the early 1990s led to an overheating of the domestic economy. We experienced severe labor shortages, soaring inflation, and immense pressure on our infrastructure and natural resources. The generous government incentives and tax holidays also had a price tag and were costly mishaps. It was here at the Central Bank of Aruba that we learned our next critical lesson. Managing prosperity is as challenging as managing a crisis. It required a careful development of monetary and microprudential tools, as well as the institutional fortitude to apply the brakes when necessary and where possibly, to ensure that our growth was sustainable and not a precursor to another bust. This journey from the despair of the refinery's closure to the dynamism of the tourism boom instilled in us a core understanding. Resilience is not passive nor static. Beyond coping with shocks and shifts, true transformative resilience is an active, deliberate choice. It requires a capacity to learn from the past, the good, the bad, and the ugly, to transform in the present, and to lead with foresight. In essence, resilience is the ability to bounce forward rather than to simply bouncing back. We had successfully transformed from an oil island to a tourism island. We had proven that the Isla Inutil was anything but useless. Ladies and gentlemen, I had the honor of joining the Central Bank in the midst of this transformation, first in the research department and later as a member of the executive committee. The first tremors were already being felt from the 9/11 terrorist attacks in 2001. As an economy almost entirely dependent on air travel, the immediate shutdown of global aviation sent a chill through our tourism sector. It was a stark reminder of how interconnected we were and how events thousands of miles away could have devastating local consequences. Then came the tragic disappearance of Natalie Holloway in 2005, a crisis of a different nature. This was not a macroeconomic shock, but a profound reputational one, which threatened the very brand of safety and tranquility we had so much cultivated. Ladies and gentlemen, each of these events taught us the importance of crisis management, communication, and the need for contingency planning. We learned that our economic resilience was inseparably linked to our social and political stability. But it was in 2008, upon being appointed president, that my perspective on resilience was truly tested. The subsequent years were a relentless procession of external shocks, each one unique, yet all demanding a steady hand at the helm of our monetary and financial systems. In 2009, the world plunged into the great financial crisis. This was a test of a different magnitude. It was a systemic shock that rippled through global financial markets and crushed consumer confidence, especially in the US, the very lifeblood of our tourism industry. As central bankers, this was our domain. Our mandate was clear: to safeguard monetary and financial stability at all costs. We worked tirelessly to ensure our banking system remained liquid, robust, and well capitalized. We used our supervisory tools to stress test our institutions and use our monetary policy levers to maintain confidence. It was a period of intense pressure, but our banking system held firm, a testament to the prudent regulatory framework we have built over the years. The 2010s brought a new regional challenge: the economic collapse of neighboring Venezuela. The resulting exodus of people and capital had a direct impact on Aruba. We faced a major run on dollars as desperate Venezuelans sought a safe haven and stable currency. Our response had to be swift and decisive. We implemented temporary capital controls and enhanced our monetary systems, successfully stemming the outflow and preserving our monetary anchor. This experience was a powerful lesson in the importance of maintaining adequate reserves and having the regulatory agility to respond to sudden cross-border capital flows. Ladies and gentlemen, amidst all these shocks and challenges, we undertook a project that was deeply symbolic of our journey of resilience. For 7 years, we embarked on an enterprise to completely redesign our Aruban Florine banknotes. This was not merely a technical exercise in security upgrades. It was a national project to reinforce our identity. In partnership with an international renowned banknote printer, we created a new series of Florine banknotes, first issued in 2019, that celebrated even more boldly the indigenous flora and fauna of Aruba, as well as its culture. It was a statement that our value as a nation is derived from our natural heritage, a declaration of our deep commitment to sustainability. Carrying these notes is a daily reminder of who we are and what we are working to protect. Then, in early 2020, came the shock that eclipsed all others: the COVID-19 pandemic. For an economy dependent on the movement of people, the complete cessation of global travel was an existential threat. Our borders abruptly closed, our hotels emptied, and our GDP plunged by over 25% in a single year. The challenges were unprecedented, but the hard lessons learned from the past crises serve us very well. Our quick and decisive response was built on a foundation of conviction, commitment, and collaboration. The Central Bank of Aruba worked in lockstep with the Aruban government and the financial sector. Besides foreign exchange actions to protect our reserve, to be able to comply with international obligations, a moratorium on loan payments was introduced to provide relief to households and businesses. We provided liquidity support to the banking system to prevent a credit crunch and maintain constant, transparent communications with the public to foster confidence and prevent panic. Our long history of social solidarity shone through. We endured. And as the world slowly reopened, our quicker than expected recovery was among the strongest in the region, a testament to the resilience that had been forged in the crucibles of past crises. Ladies and gentlemen, leading through these turbulent years taught me that the role of central bank, especially in a small open economy, transcends the technicalities of monetary and financial sector policies. We are custodians of trusts. We are anchors of stability in a storm. And our most important asset is our credibility. And we need to protect that at all costs. There is a perfect proverb in Dutch to capture all our efforts to guard trust in our institution. And that is, vertrouwen komt te voet, maar gaat te paard. Meaning that trust arrives on foot and leaves on horseback. Every day my colleague at the CBA reminds me of that. Our steadfast vision, based on our core legal mandate, has always been to safeguard the stability of the fixed exchange rate between the florin and the US dollar, as well as the soundness and integrity of our financial system. These are, however, not ends, but means to fostering financial stability for the general well-being of the Aruban community. Our vision and mandate have been our North Star through every crisis, always reminding us that behind the cold economic data are the lives and livelihoods of our people. To adequately fulfill this mandate requires more than technical expertise. It requires strong leadership, one forged in the heat of these successive crises. If I may, I would like to reflect on a few principles that my experience had taught me are essential for any leader, especially those of us entrusted with the stewardship of our nation's economic and financial institutions, as well as the well-being of our people. First, the principle of prudent courage. The worlds of finance and economics praise prudence, and rightly so. As central bankers, we are inherently conservative. We are the guardians against excess. Yet, in a crisis, prudence alone can become a form of paralysis. A crisis demands immediate action. It demands a leader who is willing to take calculated risks and make difficult decisions with incomplete information. During the global financial crisis, we had to act decisively to shore up confidence. During the pandemic, we had to deploy unconventional tools to provide life support to the economy. This is the courage I speak of, not recklessness, but a forward-looking resolve to act with inaction when inaction poses that greater threat. It is the wisdom to know when to hold a steady course and the courage to know when you must steer the ship in a new direction. In today's poly-crisis, the cost of inaction outweighed the cost of action. In line with what Candido recently posted on Instagram, I think it was yesterday I saw it, sometimes you have to jump in order to fly. Second, I have come to appreciate with ever-increasing conviction the sanctity of institutional independence. Our mandates are super long-term. Our duty is the enduring stability of the economy not the fleeting pressures of politicians or business cycles, nor the latest trends. There were times, as there are many times in the life of every central banker, when our policy advice was very unpopular, or when our decisions to tighten monetary conditions were met with resistance. But it is precisely in those moments that the value of an independent central bank is proven. Leadership in this context is the quiet, unwavering defense of the institution's integrity. It is about building a culture of technical excellence, transparent governance, and analytical honesty, so that when we speak, we do so with a voice that is trusted and apolitical. This credibility is our most important policy tool, and it's built not in the calm, but in the storm. It engenders trust, foundational trust. Finally, I learned that leadership in a central bank is an exercise in communication with conviction, where transparency is the main driver. We can have the most sophisticated transmissions model and the most brilliant economists, but if we cannot transmit and explain our actions and our rationale to the public, to the markets, and to our political counterparts, we will fail. This communication is not a secondary function, it is the very anchor of monetary policy. During the overheating of our economy and the resulting high pressures on our international reserves and prices, our ability to clearly communicate our policy responses and our commitment to the Florins Pact was just as important as the policy itself. During COVID, our regular updates provided a crucial element of certainty in a world of unknowns. True leadership thus involves translating the complex language of economics into a narrative of stability and confidence that every person can understand. It is about managing expectations, building consensus, and reinforcing the trust that is the bedrock of our financial systems. Ladies and gentlemen, learning from the past and leading through the present are essential. But the ultimate test of leadership is to anticipate and prepare for the future. You have to know your blind date. And as I look at the global landscape today, it is obvious to me that the challenges ahead may be even more formidable than those we had overcome in the past 40 years. The headwinds of trade protectionism, the fracture of geopolitical tensions, the growing strain between Venezuela and the United States, the rise of a new political order, and the undeniable accelerating threat of climate change represent a new trinity of risk for the Caribbean economies, including Aruba. Aruba's success in building a world-class tourism industry has once again made it extremely vulnerable. Our hyper-reliance on this single sector is still a major structural weakness. The pandemic laid this bare. We have learned the lessons of diversification in theory. We must now implement it in practice by fostering innovation in a way we have never done before, expanding and deepening our markets, and designing new means of long-term sustainable investments. This is a task for the current generation. This is the imperative that must guide our transformation from a successful tourism island to an island of innovation, the Isla Innovativo. Now the question is, what does this transformation look like? Ladies and gentlemen, it's not about abandoning tourism. Tourism will and should remain a vital part of our economy, but it's about building new complementary pillars of growth around it. It is about fostering an ecosystem of responsible innovation and sustainable investments that leverages our unique strengths. First, we must embrace the blue economy. Our most valuable natural resource is not only what is on our soil, but the vast expanse of the sea that surrounds us. Our primary and only economic pillar is based on the health of our marine environment. Sustainable tourism depends on a sustainable ocean. Therefore, restoring our marine environment, cultivating sustainable aquaculture, applying marine biotechnology, and implementing oceanographic research are not just niche industries. They are the future. We must therefore create the policy and regulatory frameworks that attract investment and talent into these areas, turning our marine territory in a hub of sustainable economic activity. Second, we must lead green energy transition. For too long, we have been dependent on volatile, expensive, important fossil fuels, yet we are blessed with an abundance of sun and wind. Aruba has already made significant strides in wind energy, but we must even be more ambitious and boldly. Our goal should be 100% renewable energy generation in the medium term. This is not just an environmental imperative, it is an economic one. Energy independence will lower costs for businesses and households, enhance our competitiveness, and create a new high-tech industry in renewable energy management and technology. In similar fashion, we need to rethink and redesign traditional trade relationships and logistics. While energy diversification is essential, trade diversification is pivotal to safeguarding financial stability and food security. Third, we must build a vibrant digital economy. Our size is not a limitation in the digital realm. It is an advantage. We can be a sandbox for new technologies, a testbed for digital innovations, and a hub for creative industries. However, this would require investment in digital infrastructure, AI, advanced cybersecurity, education and digital literacy, and a modernization of our legal frameworks to support e-commerce and digital services. Connectivity needs to become our next competitive edge as small islands economies. These transformations hinge, however, on investing in human capital and institutional capital. They require a durable reconnection with our talented young professionals abroad in order to capture and effectively make use of their creative and innovative capabilities. These transformations also require the strengthening of our political and economic institutions, as well as fortifying good governance. Moreover, leaning into the future and renovating our economy will most certainly demand environmental responsibility and the restoration and regeneration of our natural capital. Simply put, without natural capital, there can be no economic capital. This transformation to Isla Innovativo also calls for a mind shift and a fundamental transformation of our collective mindset. And this brings me to a crucial point. As central banks, we are often seen as conservative institutions. Our mandate is stability. But this is the new era. And I argue that the greatest risks are complacency, inertia, and inaction. The pursuit of stability cannot be an excuse for maintaining an unsustainable status quo. We must recognize that our traditional mandates are expanding. Safeguarding financial stability and promoting environmental sustainability are not two separate goals. They are fundamentally intertwined. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change is an existential threat to our fragile islands. It harbors systemic financial risks. The physical risk of hurricanes, floods, heat, and sea level rise threaten to destroy our hard-earned capital and severely disrupt economic activity. The transition risks associated with the global shift away from carbon will create winners and losers, and our financial systems must be adequately prepared. Central banks in the Caribbean must be at the forefront of this conversation, and I'm sure they are. We must integrate climate risk in our financial stability assessments. We need to encourage green finance and the development of new financial instruments like blue bonds to fund sustainable projects. More importantly, we must encourage our political leaders to create financial buffers for the future, how difficult it will be. And we need to use our influential voice to advocate for policies that align economic development with environmental preservation and restoration. I humbly submit that this is the new frontier of central banking, especially across our small islands in the Caribbean. Ladies and gentlemen, the story of Aruba, transitioning from Isla Inutil to Isla Innovativo, is a testament to the power of transformation. It teaches us that our past does not have to define our future. It shows that a small island with vision and determination can chart its own course and thrive in a turbulent world. The lessons here is not to fear shocks, for they are inevitable. The lesson is to build the institutional strength, the social cohesion, and the economic agility to withstand them and emerge even stronger. Resilience is not about bouncing back to where we were. It is about bouncing forward to where we need to be. The future is calling us. Shall we heed its call? As I prepare to conclude my tenure at the Central Bank of Aruba, I'm filled with optimism. I'm optimistic because I believe in the capacity of our people. I'm confident because I believe in the power of our regional collaboration. To lead is not to merely manage, it is to serve. It is to accept the responsibility of stewardship, the understanding that we are temporary custodians of a public trust that is much larger and more enduring than ourselves. Our duty is to leave our institutions, our economies, and our communities stronger and more resilient than we found them, and certainly not weaker. This stewardship mentality obliges us to think in terms of multiple generations, beyond many fiscal years. It demands that we invest in people and institutions, that we build sustainable bridges of partnership between the public and the private sectors, and that we never lose sight of our ultimate purpose. That purpose was beautifully captured for me in our banknote redesign project. It was a tactical and logistical challenge, to be sure. But more than that, it was an act of partnership. We deeply collaborated with artists, historians, environmentalists, and the public to create a banknote that was not just a medium of exchange, but a reflection of our national soul. It was a project grounded in the conviction that our economy is not separate from our culture, our environment, and our identity. It is about our people and their well-being. This, I believe, is the essence of resilient leadership. It is leadership that is analytically sharp, yet deeply human. A leadership that respects the lessons of the past, confronts the challenges of the present with courage, and builds a more innovative and sustainable future for all. The challenges we face, including geopolitical tensions, cyber attacks, climate change, are too large for any one of us to tackle alone. We must work together. We must share knowledge, harmonize regulations where it makes sense, and present a united front on the global stage. Forums like this annual Monetary Studies Conference are more critical than ever. They are the incubators and sandboxes where the ideas that will shape our collective futures are forged. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, my call to you today is threefold. First, a call for courage. The courage to challenge old orthodoxies, to embrace innovation, and to make the difficult long-term decisions that are necessary for a sustainable future, even when they are politically difficult in the short term. Second, a call for collaboration. The collaboration between our institutions, with our governments, and across borders to build a Caribbean economic coalition that is stronger than the sum of its parts. And finally, a call for conviction. The unwavering conviction that our small islands have a place of value and leadership in the world. The conviction that we can build economies that are not only prosperous, but also just and sustainable. The conviction, in the spirit of Adlith Brown, that through our collective efforts, we can secure the well-being of all our people. Thank you for the honor of addressing you today. It has been a privilege. Of a lifetime to serve Aruba and to work alongside all of you. Masya dank.
Thank you, Mrs. Semeleer, for such an inspiring, emotional, and thought-provoking address. Your reflections on Aruba's remarkable transformation and how innovation can redefine resilience for small island economies like ours is truly inspiring and really captures the essence of this year's conference. Would you join me on stage for a few questions?
Sure.
Take a seat over there.
There?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, so before we open the floor to the audience, I would like to start with one question. You spoke powerfully about Aruba's journey from over-resilience on the refinery sector to a more diversified economy, and your vision for an Isla Innovativo grounded in green, blue, and digital pillars. What policy or institutional changes do you see as most critical to turn that vision into measurable economic transformation?
I think there's many things that needs to happen in Aruba. One of the most important things is deepening our capital market. We have to make sure that when we invest in the institutions, I would say the utility companies, they should have make arrangements to get at least an implicit rating. So there is a lot of work to be done in making sure when we invest and we attract investors that they are investing in good institutions. So that's very important. And the government should invest in good governance. And we need, that is my opinion, a new, different form of government, and also a structure that is more, I would say, made of this time.
Thank you. I would like to now open the floor for questions from the audience. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and one of our team members will bring a microphone to you.
Thank you. I am Delile Worrell, and I think I am the only person in the audience who actually knew Adlith Brown. She was a friend of mine. And I can say that Jeanette's lecture, and Jeanette is somebody that I've known for a long time, is really a fitting tribute to her memory. And you got a lot more positive response than I did when I delivered the lecture myself. I have a couple of questions for you related to the issue of, where Aruba goes from here. And one of them is a factual question as to the percentage of solar and wind and other renewable energy that is currently on the grid in Aruba. That's the first question. And the second one was suggested by something that you mentioned. You mentioned reconnecting with your talented professionals abroad. Now, that is a concern. She's not really abroad. But that is a concern that all our countries have, that there are strong incentives for our professionals to go abroad, and that many who actually don't go abroad find that there are limited opportunities for them to fulfill their talents and their capabilities domestically. So my second question is that a problem that Aruba faces, and what suggestions would you offer for dealing with it?
The first question you had on the energy part, solar energy, I think we are about, and wind energy, I think we are about 20-something% of total energy need in Aruba. When we started, we were very, one of the first islands to do that very quickly. But then the community was getting a bit upset with having all these large windmills in their backyard. And there were a lot of political campaigns against that. And unfortunately, Aruba stopped with that. And I think we should, again, very quickly build that again. The prices of solar winds and winds and solar energy have declined immensely. So it has become even cheaper. I think, in my opinion, the government should hand out freely solar panels. That is my opinion. In terms of attracting back our international talents, I've been in Holland this year, the Netherlands, to talk to these talented young Arubans and somewhat older professionals, and to offer them a job in Aruba. And I must say, as we are hesitating in designing correct policies to attract these young talented people to Aruba, they already gained roots in the Netherlands. And our salaries and secondary benefits cannot compete with the Netherlands. So that means that the government of Aruba should design a variety of tools, including perhaps debt forgiveness, student loans forgiveness, designing special fiscal instruments to reduce income tax. In Aruba, we are one of the most expensive islands in terms of taxation. And we should have a constant conversation with our talents in the Netherlands and in other parts of the world. I told the government and the Prime Minister then, we cry at the airport when all these young, talented people leave Aruba. But we don't worry anymore when they are in the Netherlands, because there's no structural policy to attract them back to the island, which is very sad.
Thank you very much. We have a question over here. the front.
Just a simple question. Who owned the refinery? And why was the refinery closed abruptly?
That's a very good question. When it closed down in 1985, it was owned by Exxon. And then they had a special arrangement in getting Venezuelan oil at a very cheap price. But then, at some point, that negotiation went sour. So the refinery had to shut down because they were equipped to process heavy oil. And then it was owned by different American companies. And it was, I think it's based on on economic analysis that they shut down. And just a few days ago, the government of Aruba decided that it will clean up the refinery completely and to start, I would say, negotiations with different companies to start new businesses on this property. And we tried to find oil, and until now, it was not successful. Some people still believe it's possible.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? No? And I have one final question. Mrs. Semeleer, as a young professional, this conference brings many young professionals. Oh, okay. Okay, I will take your question next. This conference brings together many young professionals, and as someone who has paved the way for many of us, what message do you have for the next generation of central bankers, and especially young women, as myself, who inspire to build their careers in leadership and economics?
You should definitely come to the Central Bank of Aruba. 70% of our staff are ladies. So what we are trying to do, and I'm a little bit embarrassed in saying that, when we get two persons, a gentleman and a lady, and they have the same qualifications, we are hiring the men. Because an organization full of women does not represent the community. So it's a very good question. And unfortunately, since I was at the high school, the proportion of ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if also in your case, when you went to colegio, women were very successful in finishing their high school, much better than gentlemen. So I think another point is when you are a lady and you come back to Aruba, it's a very expensive island. You have debt, study debt. You have to take care of a family. You have to take your children to a buitenschool, and it's very expensive. And at the same time, you have to take care of your parents. So, and you're a mother and a caretaker of your own family. So as a woman, it's very difficult in Aruba. I'm sure it's also the case in many of the Caribbean islands. So the government should work on a policy, and they're doing that right now, to make sure that there is gender equality. There is a gap in wage in Aruba. I think the gap is about 30 or 31%, right? So that needs to be closed. And we expect so much from the ladies, and we are not paying them sufficient. So the government should try to make sure and understand why there is a wage gap. And also, it is important to provide some subsidies for peuterschool. And that's the biggest problem we have in Aruba is the aging, because our parents, it's very expensive to take care of them. So that's something that the government is also working on that, to make sure that we as women can be productive at work.
Thank you very much.
The same as men, of even more.
Thank you very much. I think you will never let go that I came to Curaçao instead of Aruba. We have, oh, does it work? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. We have another question from the audience.
Good evening. My name is Naomi Francis, and I'm from the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. So I had a similar question to Jasmira in relation to legacy and leadership. I think a lot of the issues that you spoke of for Aruba is issues that we can relate to across the region. So I wanted your insights as to how you could see us as an entire Caribbean region coming together to address some of the issues, considering that we also deal with unisectoral issues, and we are all trying to diversify into similar areas. How do we work together so that we don't compete against each other, but we are able to progress together? And my second question, in relation to the legacy and leadership, what advice would you give to young people coming into central banking at this time, considering you spoke of the shift in what central banking was and what it is? What advice would you give to young people, and how do you plan to use your experience? Because listening to you, you hear the heart in what you say when you speak of your experiences. So how would you plan to use your experience to leave a legacy for young people coming in? Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Quite long. I hope I give you the right answers. I think there are many ways we can collaborate. We are already collaborating between our two sister institutions. That's the most easiest one. We are in the same vicinity. We are closer to each one. So that brings a lot of advantage. We work on the payments and on research together. So there are plenty of opportunities to work together. And that same cooperation is possible also with other central banks. We're working on supervision and harmonizing regulations. So on that part, we are not competing in making sure that we all have the same conditions to, for example, admit financial institutions, how we supervise them, etc. So that's a level playing field for all of us. How should we, or should I, encourage young people to become central bankers, good central bankers? One thing is for sure. When you are young and you just study, and you study perhaps economics, you're not a central banker. That's the bad news. Central banker is, for me, is somebody that has worked at least 5 to 10 years at a central bank. You don't get out of college as a central banker. You have to work hard. You have to understand the mandate. It's a tough job because you can earn even more outside of a central bank. Central bank, you serve the community. You have to have this connection with the purpose of a central bank. I would say work very hard. Don't take things personal. And be quite loyal to the institution and to the community. That's all what you have to do.
Thank you, everyone, for your thoughtful questions. To express our appreciation, I would like to ask Mr. Richard Doornbos, the president of the Centrale Bank van Curaçao and Sint Maarten, to say a few words and also present you with a token of appreciation. You can stay seated. I will leave the stage. Yes.
Maybe. No. Good evening. Excellencies, Gouverneur de Kot. I was inclined to translate, but then I would say Governor de Kot, and that we have 7 governors here. So, Gouverneur de Kot and governors and colleagues, very pleased that you are here in this wonderful Adlith Brown Memorial Lecture. So when we were considering whom to invite to deliver this year's lecture, we looked, and that was a suggestion actually from CERT, we looked to our own region. And when we did this and we wanted to have somebody speak from our own region on the theme, resilience through transformation. So our thoughts turned immediately to Aruba and especially to you, President Semeleer. So like most of the Caribbean islands, I mean, you explained very clearly in your talk, Aruba is small, Aruba is open, very prone to shocks. But you have shown also, and Aruba has shown, and under your leadership, you have shown that it is a country that has met adversity with resolve and with reform. And so, building on that context, your presentation showed, I think, very clearly that countries can rebound from shocks not only, but they can bounce forward. And I think that was the key takeaway for me from your presentation. And I think that is also something that is maybe a testament of your tenure, bouncing forward. One of the themes, one of the studies that you did that stuck with me was the studies that was governing from the future. And I think that was very much also reflected tonight. We also invited you, so I think that was an added benefit, that of course it is sort of a tribute to your tenure as a president of the Central Bank of Aruba. In 2008 it was being said already, you started as president, but you had a career as researcher and economist before that. And you are the first woman in the kingdom. We spoke about this. There are a lot of women actually within central banking, not only I think in Aruba. We have very strong women as deputy governors all over the place, so I think it won't be long. We have many governors, women governors, but for now it's only 16% of the 185. So we looked this up, it is really something. And if you look at us, guys, we need her at the meeting, right? Otherwise this picture is horrific. Yeah. So no, I think your career in central banking is distinguished. Throughout your years of service, you have been thoughtful, you have been a respected voice. And your contribution is marked, I think, by modesty. It's analytical, it is determined, and you have a warm leadership style. And that has left a lasting imprint on our region and on our regional cooperation. So for that, President Semeleer, Jane, I would like to present you with a token of appreciation. It is an imprint of Island Goddess by Renata Rolefes. That's the artist. And according to the artist, the work is inspired by the vibrant women of the Caribbean and captures the grace and the strength they carry. So it celebrates the harmony between nature and feminine power and symbolizes resilience and joy. So in many ways, I think this gift reflects your steadfast leadership, your integrity, and your clarity of purpose. So Jane, thank you very much for this lecture. Thank you very much for your dedicated leadership. Thank you very much for your warm friendship and that helped build trust and credibility between our institutions. And I'm sure I thank you and wish you on behalf of Laila, on behalf of our fellow governors, we wish you a healthy and very long retirement from central banking.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you for your time, first. He said correctly, from the Central Bank. Yeah, you will see me. Thank you.
Once again, on behalf of the Centrale Bank van Curaçao and Sint Maarten, CERT, and the organizing committee of the 56th Annual Monetary Studies Conference, I would like to thank Mrs. Semeleer for sharing her wisdom and experience with us this evening. And to all of you, thank you for being part of this special moment in our region's ongoing economic conversation. We now invite you to join us outside for some refreshment and the continued conversation. Thank you, have a pleasant evening, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Can you please rise for the exit of His Excellency, Mr. Maurits de Kort, Governor of Curaçao.